So the Switch has been on the market for a little over a year now, and with that comes a ton of third-party accessories that are starting to hit the market. Now, we've had some in its first year, and now we're kind of getting into the back half, and we're starting to see even more stuff, controllers, even at this point, cables that pretty much eliminate the dock completely. But controllers for the Pro Controller alternative has been something that gets thrown around a lot online. People are looking for a way to get the Pro Controller experience without having to spend the Pro Controller price. It's something I can understand, depending on your situation. Now, we're going to go over one in particular today that actually kind of surprised me, to be honest, because for the price, it has way more features than it should. Now, the price of this controller, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, is about $27, and it's on Amazon and it's Prime shipped. And because of that, I'm going to put it more in the ballpark of some of those PowerA controllers. Remember those that we would see, and they would be completely wired. They'd be missing pretty much everything except for the basic function of input and being able to use it with your Switch. Well, this controller is $27, and it has gyro controls for motion controls. It has rumble, and it's fully wireless. And it's $27. So this controller is the EEEKit wireless gamepad controller, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced with 3 E's or it's just the EEEKit wireless controller. It's one of the two. Doesn't matter. It's $27, and it does pretty much everything the Pro Controller does, except for one thing that I noticed. It doesn't seem to have NFC compatibility for Amiibo support, so you're not going to use your Amiibos with this. But honestly, when I picked it up and started using it, I was a little shocked at how well it worked. To be honest, it works very well. And today we're going to take a look at this controller, compare it to the Pro Controller, and strangely, compare it to the Xbox One controller, because to be honest, they pretty much ripped off the Xbox One controller design, and basically, that's kind of what it is, an Xbox One controller for your Switch. First, let's take a look around the controller. You're going to see, especially when I put it next to an Xbox One controller, it looks almost exactly the same, except they have, of course, A and B switched around, and they have a few extra things, including one extra button on the top that we're going to take a look at. But it does have the home button at the top, the plus and minus buttons in the spots that pretty much the start and select buttons would be on the Xbox One. And the thumbsticks themselves are pretty much exactly the same as the Xbox One controller. Whether you like that design or not, you pretty much know what the thumbsticks are. And honestly, the thumbsticks on this E controller, they're actually good. Like, they feel good. They feel solid, which is actually very welcomed with a lot of third-party designs where they feel very cheap. No, these feel actually very good. Again, shockingly good, to be honest. The D-pad is smushy. I don't like the D-pad, but I don't really like the D-pad on a lot of things for a Nintendo Switch right now, to be honest. The Pro Controller, I guess, is the best D-pad right now, and even that seems to hit other inputs randomly when you're using it. People will talk about that all the time. And the D-pads in general nowadays just are not good. Get the SNES 30, I guess, if you want a good D-pad. That's a good D-pad. It also has kind of those curved triggers that you do see on the Xbox One controller. I actually like those a lot. But these are, of course, digital triggers, so it's interesting that it has so much travel for something that won't use that travel correctly. But I like the curvature of those triggers. The left bumper and right bumper at the top, as they have them set up, do click in when you press them, so they at least feel good there as well. They didn't even take the left bumper, right bumper off, or right trigger, left trigger off. Those still say those. And then at the top, you might be wondering where the share button is. It's actually on the top. I don't like that placement, but I guess they couldn't put it on the front, so you do have to kind of go up top. It feels kind of like the sync button on the Xbox One controller, and then there's a reset button there, and that is to kind of reset and turn off the whole controller if you want it to just be turned off. Now, syncing it up isn't too bad, but I noticed that the instructions are a little wrong. You do just go to the standard grip or controller menu for the Switch, and when you go to sync it up, you press the home button, and Y, you literally press it down until you see this light up at all, and then you let go. At that point, it will actually sync up completely wireless. I never had to plug this in to get it synced up, which was really cool. And at that point, you have a fully functional wireless Pro Controller, as that's how it sees it in the menu, and it functions exactly the same. Seriously, I tested it with motion controls. I said, all right, let me jump in and see how the motion controls feel. Jumped in the Wolfenstein. They feel as you would expect with the Pro Controller. Again, I was surprised. So then I went ahead and I said, all right, let's try out the D-pad. And honestly, the D-pad, I didn't have the best expectations because D-pads in general on the Switch haven't been great. Try out Pocket Rumble, and yeah, for my, I guess, novice abilities in a fighting game, it seemed fine. So from there, I jumped over to Mega Man 8, a game, obviously Mega Man, I'm a bit more familiar with, and I could feel the D-pad, and it controlled well enough. Again, D-pads in general, right now, if you're not using like a SNES 30 or an 8-bit DOE controller, where that is the best the best D-pad you can use right now. It was manageable and it worked fine. And honestly, again, for $27, I'm a little surprised. It also does have rumble, but a very important note, it's not the same type of rumble that's in the Pro controller, i.e. it's not HD rumble. It's a standard motor that just kind of spins inside, much like you'd see in an Xbox One or a PS4 controller. So it doesn't really have those, I guess, fine-tuned vibrations that something like the Pro controller or the Joy-Con controller would have. It's just very standard when it comes to the rumble. But honestly, it has rumble, and that's a little surprising too compared to what we are comparing it to, which are things like that PowerA controller. It's also a bit lighter than the Pro controller that we use for the Switch currently with the first-party offerings. It's about 50 grams lighter. I think a lot of that has to do with the smaller battery. This is a 380 milliamp hour battery, which is like almost 1,000 or so less than what's in the Pro controller, as this uses like a 3DS battery basically. So that's going to bring us to one of our biggest drawbacks of this controller, and that's the battery life. The battery life in this, they quote in the manual, is about 5 hours. I saw maybe a little over 4 hours. So this is not the longest lasting controller, and that's a far cry from what we're used to with this Pro controller, which people have found is like, 20, 30, even 40 hours. Mine doesn't last that long, but it definitely lasts way longer than this one. I mean, seriously, I actually have this set up on like a power block, and I kind of put it away on that, and I've never had to recharge this in the middle of a play session. Even if it was real, like I played all day, never really had to do that. So that did happen. Octopath Traveler, I did like a little marathon session of that last night, and this actually started to kind of die on me. So yeah, that's something you're gonna see. It's not the longest lasting battery, and in the manual they quote it takes about 2 hours to recharge this thing, which was very weird to see that because it's a very small battery, so I have no idea why it takes that long apparently to recharge it. I just left it plugged in overnight and I didn't really think about it, but it was fully charged the next morning. I also noticed that it can't wake the Switch up from sleep mode, so you're gonna have to use a Joy-Con, or I guess get up and press the power button on the Switch to get this thing kind of going. Unfortunately, it just can't for some reason get the Switch out of sleep mode, which could be just because it's a third-party controller and just can't send that signal. So I guess at this point, we'll go ahead and take this thing apart and see how quality the parts are inside, because I'm trying to figure out where they cut the corners exactly to get it under $30 for what they're adding here and what really they have for us. It's very interesting, and I guess maybe if we actually take this apart, we can figure that out. All right, here we go. It looks like it's all Phillips head. That's great, because I've had to deal with Tri-Wings a lot recently, and I was not liking that as much. So Phillips head, if it's all Phillips head, it's so much easier to deal with. So let's go ahead, get this guy apart. We'll get all these screws out and see what we have in here. All right, so we got our back off. All right, and it does use kind of that clear plastic that the Pro controller uses. Probably just try to emulate that same look that the standard one uses. My Xenoblade one, of course, doesn't really use that. It kind of uses on the front, but it has so much artwork on it that it just doesn't look the same. So we have our rumble motors. These are actually directly soldered. That's not something you usually see. A lot of times these will be plug-in, especially on like the Xbox controllers, for example, that these obviously are mimicking. The battery, though, is plugged in, so that's good, I guess. It can be unplugged, and I guess if you need a new one. This is a very small battery. This might be a spot where they did save some money because it's such a small battery. I would have preferred them to get a slightly larger battery in here and maybe make it like $35 just to get more battery life out of it, but I guess they had their sights set on a very cheap price, and unfortunately that $5 or that 5-hour battery life, I think, hurts it more than they think. All right, so we got our board out. They're using kind of this interesting looking, I guess, this white PCB. It is fairly thick actually for a board and a controller. It's actually not like a thin little board or anything, so it feels fairly solid. It looks like they are doing something kind of similar to what we've seen before in an Xbox One controller where it has like 2 different boards. Even the Pro controller kind of has that as well, though. And it looks like the way that they're pressing these shoulder buttons, these are actually on like a hinge, and they kind of press the button down here, which I guess is okay because that means the button is not directly behind here to get mashed down. So it will take some of that impact away, which I guess is good. It's harder, I guess, to break the button that's in there. This also has the same kind of white, fairly thick board actually. So they're using some decent components. They're not like the best components, obviously, because there's a cheaper board, there's a cheaper controller, but these are not flimsy little boards that are in here. And it looks like, that's weird. It looks like some of the buttons X, Y, and B are on this board, and then this one is actually part of the full motherboard itself. That's pretty interesting. But overall, I have to say, it is a very compact board. As you see, everything is pretty much here and then just a little bit on there. Like, it's not like, there's not like a bunch of stuff going on here that's crazy or anything. I would have liked to see them try to get NFC in here, but that might be a proprietary thing for Nintendo, and it's not something they can emulate. But for the most part, again, for $27, I'm a little surprised it's not terribly built inside. It's not amazing, but it's not terribly built inside. You know what I mean? It's very average, but for the price, it's actually pretty good. I was also curious about this D-pad. This thing is just like its own thing. Check this out. It looks like it actually just plugs in through here. Like it actually has a plug, and the whole thing just comes off. So here's the D-pad. That's actually pretty funny. And it looks like it just operates through there and I guess presses on this board here. And this is probably something that can even, I guess, come off. So I decided to unscrew it. Yeah, this D-pad is kind of its own thing, and it does have actually a fairly large pivot point in the middle. Let me get that to focus for you. It actually has a pretty good, you see how large that pivot point is in the middle there? So it'll actually press down and I guess help it pivot around. And if you look on the other side, it is kind of using the membrane kind of tactile push. So, I mean, internally, this is not a bad D-pad. It just still feels kind of mushy when I press down on it. But yeah, I mean, it's actually halfway decent. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for the EEEKit wireless gamepad controller, or the EEEKit wireless gamepad controller. I was a little surprised. Honestly, for $27, this is actually a pretty good buy, to be honest. Now, I'm going to tell you guys what I've always told you guys. Buy first party if it's for you and if you're playing your system a lot. The functionality and the quality and everything is obviously here. I understand it's $70, and for some people, they just don't want to buy that, and that's fine. But you have to also understand, if you start spending less money on things, you're not going to get the same value. But if you have to buy a cheap knockoff Pro controller, this is actually a pretty good buy at $27, and I can actually recommend this for its price. Seriously, I mean, we've seen the stuff that it's compared to with those PowerA controllers that don't have any of these features, and it has to be tethered to the system. Yeah, this is a good buy. Or if you have kids that you're worried they're going to be rough with a $70 controller, and you want to buy them a cheap controller, or you have friends that come over occasionally and you don't want to have a Pro controller sitting around, I mean, you can buy almost 3 of these, because they even have a bundle on Amazon where you can get 2 of these for less than $50. You can basically buy just about 3 of these for the price of 1 of these. So if you have this for yourself and you get your friends, you know, a couple of these controllers, these will work fine for people who just come over occasionally and play games with you. It is definitely a good alternative to a more expensive Pro controller. So guys, let me know what you think about this controller. Are you surprised about the value of this controller? Do you already have this, and do you like it or dislike it? If you're curious about I guess, where you can pick this up, I do have a link down in the description for you guys to Amazon where I picked this one up. And it got to me very, very quickly, actually. It actually got to me in about a day and a half, so shockingly fast, I guess, so that's good. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning for Newswave.